Hello, lovely listeners. This is Jeffrey here at Tudor, I Hardly Know Her. Wanted to thank some of our lovely supporters at patreon.com of our $5 and up. So if you'd like to hear your name, go to patreon.com and donate today. Or if you just want to donate $1, you can get all our bonus episodes on there. But today I'd like to thank Caroline Ingrid, Emily Blomer, Jackie Moore, Catherine Denny, Melissa S., Philip Nacco, Rian Jepson, Samantha Martin, Taylor Maharg, Tiffany, and Tiffany Anderson. Thanks so much, and on to our episode.
Let's get podcasting.
Podcast time. Time for us to podcast.
Ricka
please
remix.
Put your babies to sleep. What would you do? Get up off my feet and
What
stop
would-
making tight excuses.
What would you do?
'Cause I want my baby to go through what I've been through.
What would you do?
Get up off my feet and stop making tight excuses.
What would you do?
'Cause I want my baby to go through what I've been through. What would you do if your son was at home? Crying all alone on the bedroom floor 'cause he's hungry. And the only way to feed him is to sleep with a man for a little bit of money. And his dad is gone. So we're smoking rock now, in and out of lockdown.
I ain't got a job now. So for you,
this is just a good time. But for me, this is what I call life.
We're
Welcome
so
to Tudor,
in
I Hardly
sync.
Know Her.
What the hell was that?
Do you not know that song?
No.
Garrett from the top.
No, I heard it. Doesn't mean I know it.
So the
Boys
song
and girls
is...
want to hear a true story.
So the song is, this guy's at a party and a bunch of strippers and hookers end up coming to the party because it was a
Typical.
real wild party. And one of the women turns out to be a girl he knew in high school, and he's giving her shit. He's like, I can't believe that you ended up doing this. And she's like, my husband or my baby's father is in jail. I'm trying to feed my son. I'm doing what it takes. And he's like, yeah, you're full of shit. You should be doing better. Like, it's actually a really fucking awful song.
Who does the song?
Garrett?
City High.
There we go. With a Bastille version.
When
BT
did this
dubs.
come out?
In late 90s, early 2000s.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah, Jeff didn't listen to music.
I
He
didn't
listened
listen,
to-
I didn't listen to bands until like college.
Jeff listened to soundtracks. Like a
No joke.
big
I
ol' nerd.
literally had John Williams CDs in my car.
Well, Bastille did a cover of it like 7 years ago.
It was good.
But-
I'll
I'm
play
not,
it for
I'm
you.
not a
Anyway.
Bastille fan. Hey, welcome to Tudor, I Hardly Know Her, the karaoke podcast. I'm your host, Gary Kaser.
Where we tutor.
I'm your other host, and I know her. I'm Emily.
You neuter?
I'm neuter.
We're never getting past
Oh,
that.
is she awake again?
And I'm Jeffrey. Hello.
Anyway, Emily, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about the exciting world of government.
Woo!
Yeah, I know. Hold your applause. So I feel like whenever I'm reading a book,
A book.
the Privy Council, I've had one.
You said privy, right?
Yeah, Privy.
I heard pervy console.
Also, yes.
I mean, it kind of goes inside with
I mean,
government.
Sorry, whenever I read a book, I obviously see a lot about the Privy Council, but I never really understood exactly what they would do besides argue with Henry and Elizabeth and Mary and Edward and Henry. So, I decided we would have a whole podcast episode where we discuss the exciting world of the government structure of 15th or 16th century Tudor England.
hooray.
All right.
Politics.
Exciting.
Look, guys.
I'll get the marmalade.
Our politics currently suck. So let's go back into the past where it's at least done.
Where it also
Everything's a
sucked.
dumpster fire, so let's go back to when things were already a dumpster fire, but
there were
maybe
no
not as
dumpsters.
much.
So it was
There-
just
there-
everything was on fire.
Emily,
That was back
don't
with
bury the-
Nero.
don't bury the lead. Was it worse or better?
I mean, 1536, guys. Tyrannical Henry VIII.
Crazy redhead person who's obsessed with himself and thinks everything's about him.
It's about the same.
Was there fake news?
Ye old fake
There'd be the
news.
guy out with a little like bell dinging, hear ye, here's the news. Fake.
He's Fox.
No, that was
His name
no.
is John Fox.
Oh God. He's a very good
God
guy.
damn it. Podcast is over. We can't top that.
No, we can't. Guys. All right. So are you ready to talk a little bit about what it was like when you wanted to be a king back then?
And it was good to be the king.
It was.
I've heard that.
Because
You were the government.
you were the government. Sorry, bit my tongue. My tongue. So back in the 16th century. Back in the 16th century, there were a couple of important bodies when it come to the government. Oh my God, I should not have had wine. Let's talk about something complicated. So there's a government, and there's the king. And if you picture the king, and then there's the government, they do things together. All right.
How much did you drink?
Half a glass.
I love the sound of drinking from a wine glass on a podcast.
Okay, back to totally sober.
Totally Tober.
I'm totally sober. So, back in Henry VIII's and Elizabeth I's time, just so everybody knows, most of the information I found was about Elizabeth's court and her government, which was probably slightly different than Henry's, because there was like a 50-year difference, but you know. So here's what the structure looked like. There were a couple of different important bodies. So middle school government. Henry VIII's like, this is sexy body.
We'll say there's Henry's body, and then there's his wife's body, and then hopefully they can get a third body.
No, that's her head.
Oh.
All right, guys, let's go back to your middle school government classes. Do you remember the branches of government in the U.S.?
Judicial.
Legislative, judicial, executive.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, would it help if I tried to explain this government in terms of what you know?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So first there was the monarch, and for all intents and purposes, let's just say that's similar to the president, except there's no real checks and balances. The monarchy was an actual ruler, as opposed to nowadays where the monarchy is very much a figurehead. Mm-hmm. So they were the ultimate decider. They could determine the national religion, when Parliament would sit and what it would discuss, when they would go to war, matters of education, and what citizens could eat and wear.
It's such a strange time to think about when they had to have someone to tell you what religion you're supposed to be thinking of. All right. This year we're gonna be let's be
Jewish. That could be fun.
Let's be interesting. Yeah.
No,
No
it's
pork.
just on a
Sorry.
lark.
I wanted to try Hanukkah. We could do it.
We'll switch back next year. It's fine.
Right. It's totally fine.
The idea of the modern day monarchy, like, I get it. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And they are figureheads. But it's just like, hey, you're going to be famous the rest of your life because your family was incredibly lucky and probably a little bloodthirsty.
There's definitely bloodthirstiness going on in the monarchy.
And that definitely doesn't work in our political system either.
Blah, blah, blah.
Anyway,
so the interesting thing about the monarchy back then was that they had what was called the divine right of kings. Essentially, that meant that everybody believed, especially the king or queen themselves, believed that they were appointed by God. They were anointed. They were specifically chosen by God to be the ruler. So
has anybody traced it back to like when that all started, and it was just some guy saying, you know what, I'm king?
No, but it probably has a lot to do with how religion was part of culture back then, as opposed to now, where like you can be a human without being religious. But back
we
then,
learned with the Tudors how they got into power. A lot of it was just they won.
Well, yes, but they don't see it as that. They see it as God wanted me to win.
Yeah,
Well,
I smited God's enemies, so therefore
Exactly.
I should be the ruler because I was the one that did it.
I
well, like,
am
that was-
divinely appointed
like
to do
that was
this.
the logic with like the Pharaoh and everything. Like with the Pharaoh, they thought the Pharaoh was God.
God. Yeah. Yeah. So
Lemmy is God.
Who would win in a fight? Either Lemmy from Motorhead or God? Trick question. Lemmy is God.
Airheads.
Airheads with Brendan Fraser.
Well, I know what movie we're watching next. Brendan Fraser's my man. Anyway, back to the divine right of kings. So essentially, they thought that they were all powerful, and God said everything they did was like right. Which, when you think of that, it's really not hard to have imagined Henry VIII being like, "No, I'm totally supposed to divorce Catherine of Aragon. That's what God
God
wants
told
me
me
to." Yeah. So
I spoke with him. It's all
Hey,
okay.
Yeah,
it's like self-fulfilling prophecy. God told me to do this, and whatever I do, God says is cool.
Yep.
So
you guys can't talk to God, but I can talk to God.
exactly, precisely.
You know, like how like the mayor would have the phone to like a superhero.
Yes.
Henry VIII had that to God.
The phone to God. He invented the phone so he could Henry VIII. Fun fact: Henry invented the phone. Fuck you, Alexander Graham Bell, trying to
The God
steal
phone.
his
The God
invention.
phone. It's like the bat phone except a God.
So, although Elizabeth wasn't able to create laws, they were still they still required her consent. So, there's, kind of balance there, but not really, because she could tell Parliament to not.
Well, see, that's the part that also fascinates me because you're supposed to have like you think, oh, the king or queen is the ones who make all the rules, and like they're the ones who have the final say in anything.
Kind of. Henry figured out how to circumvent
Oh, he learned
Parliament.
he learned to get around a lot of things.
Yes, he really did. So, however, even though she couldn't make a law, she was still able to draw up a bill and put it into Parliament, and then it becomes the Schoolhouse Rock song, and everybody's happy.
I want that version of Schoolhouse Rocks, except for monarchs.
All right, can you please sing, Jeffrey? I want to hear you sing "I'm Just a Bill," but do a British accent.
Well, at that part you already failed because I can't sing or shit.
Garrett, go.
Oh, I'm just a bill, I am. I'm sitting on Capitol Hill.
Perfect. So,
Never mind.
How
I
many
am
listeners
proven
do we
wrong.
lose off that?
I think we just gained 10.
I'm a goddamn bill, I am.
Crikey. Wait, that's Australian.
That's Australian. Come on, Emily, get your accents.
Oh, I'm
in
just a
order.
bit.
I got
Put
it.
some shrimp on the barbie.
We lost all of our Australian listeners.
So, even though Elizabeth couldn't make a bill or couldn't make a law, she was able to make a royal proclamation, which is exactly what it sounds like. She just proclaimed something. So, not really. It didn't really do much. She just said it.
Well, I'd like to start this new law up. I don't really think we can, but I wanna. That seems like it all boils down to that, like
Kind of.
TLDR, but I want it.
Yeah. Oh, that was monarchy back then. But I want it. We're not going to give it to you. Then I'm making my own religion.
It's okay.
That's me in the corner.
This is my permit. I can do
I
what
do
I
what
want.
I want. So after the monarch, there came the Privy Council. So this consisted of the Lord Treasurer, Lord Chancellor, Lord Privy Seal, and Lord Secretary, who was Secretary of the State. Quite a few others were involved, but those were usually some of the main people in it. The Privy Council were advisors that Elizabeth or Henry, the king, the ruling monarch, would choose themselves, which, I mean, really, you're stacking the deck in your own favor to get shit done. But the job of the Privy Councilor was actually to offer dissenting opinions. So that's why there were always these, people going against each other who didn't like each other. It kind of served almost an informal checks and balances where they would fight with each other, and then Elizabeth could be like, okay, I've heard everybody's opinion, we're going to go with your thing. But then they would also carry out the orders. So I think you could say it's similar to the cabinet of the U.S.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's not even a cabinet in here.
So the council would also carry out routine administrative duties, they're not paying invoices or anything, but they would just make sure all the day-to-day stuff was going smoothly and they could make adjustments to whatever needed to be adjusted. So they would oversee religion, military, economics, the welfare of citizens, and the Queen's security. They would then also issue proclamations in the Queen's name. So now I'm not sure if the Queen, whenever she issues a royal proclamation, if she's just declaring it to her Privy Council, and the Privy Councilor is like, did you get that? Did you get that? Somebody write that down. We have to go proclaim it. And then they send their little minions. Because the Privy Council also had their own little guys, like secretaries and assistants, who the Queen would give the Privy Councilor their duties, and then the Privy Councilor would give it to their assistant. Basically, it's like any company.
Where you have like the top people, and then just keeps going down to more levels of like,
Hey, you do this. Okay, thank you. No,
report
you
to
do
you,
this.
report to
Hey,
you,
Yeah.
report to you.
do this for me.
Yep. So at one point there were 50 counselors, which clearly probably didn't work that well. 50 people all yelling at each other does not do very
Robble,
much.
robble, 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 robble.
I mean, yeah, you either have 50 people yelling at each other and just all screaming at each other, not getting shit done, or you have 5 people who are making all the goddamn decisions.
Well,
Neither one's great.
she kind of hit a middle ground. She had 19 people.
Oh, that's way better.
Elizabeth ended up having 19, and then it dropped to 11. I don't think it's like our Senate, where if somebody like dies or gets caught in a scandal where they're texting pictures of their dicks to each other, and they get fired, they don't get immediately replaced. Like, it's really up to the monarch. But so it went from 50 to 19, and then by the end of her reign, Elizabeth had 11. So it was a little bit more balanced and probably a lot easier to manage. As I said earlier, I think. Sorry, I keep yawning. It was a rough night.
Nice, Jeff.
No, I had a really bad headache.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. You should be. It's all your fault.
Yeah, you're right.
So, as I think I said earlier, the Secretary of State kind of led the council. And they would meet about 3 times a week at first, but then eventually they were meeting every day. So I guess it's probably better that they at least had their little cronies to take the shit and get it done, because they clearly wouldn't have had the time to do it if they were sitting in meetings. And they were probably sitting in these meetings thinking, this could have been a goddamn email.
Could have sent a fox.
Memo boy.
Could you just fox me? So after the Privy Council, but next up in our lineup, there's the Parliament. So the Parliament is divided into the House of Lords, which is the nobility, higher clergy, like the archbishops and bishops, and then the House of Commons, and obviously that was the common
So all
people.
your chess players all at once.
All of your chess players. So if you're looking at a chessboard, the House of Lords is the back row, and the House of Commons is the pawns that everybody just throws down and sacrifices and can't really do anything. Anyway, because it wasn't enough that they were clearly divided by wealth and genealogy, they also decided to call them the upper and lower house. Guess which was the upper, and guess which was the lower. I know. I feel like we should text our British guy and ask him if it still works like that, where it's the nobility versus the commoners.
Simple folk.
The simple folk of ye olde England. So the Parliament was in control of money, which you'd think that made them pretty powerful, but it really didn't, because Elizabeth got to decide if they would actually be called into work. So they could control the taxation. They would grant the Queen money, but they didn't have a prime minister, they didn't have a cabinet, and they didn't have any political parties. So any sort of daily administrative stuff for the country was like, I don't even know. I guess just like road work and shit. I don't know. I don't fucking know.
The speed bumps.
The speed bumps of old England. They would be paid by the monarch's feudal dues and the sales of land. So the feudal dues is when somebody owes money to the person who owns the land that they're like farming or
Like your landlord?
Yeah, literally. Literally the landlord.
I'm the lord of land.
Yeah. So everybody who owned
If my
land would
landlord
collect
talked to me like
those.
that, I'd punch him in the throat.
And
I am the
then
lord of these lands, this apartment
Ye old
complex.
studio.
then Parliament would give money for any sort of extraordinary expenditures that'd be considered like war, which was
Cod
expensive.
pieces.
Henry's cod pieces.
War and Codpiece. My favorite book.
That's our episode title.
War and cod pieces.
Oh boy.
Woo.
So Parliament would also pass the laws that Elizabeth wasn't able to tell them they had to pass, but could ask them to pass, and then declare that she really wanted it passed. So, one of the funny things I was reading, one of the articles was like, the Parliament was also able to advise the Queen, because I was specifically reading an article about it during Elizabeth's time, and they're like, Parliament was able to advise the Queen. The Queen never cared. Like, she never cared to ask
Well, you have
their
to have them in
advice.
place just to, make it seem like you're not, just a god king emperor.
No, they need to know their place. So of the two houses of Parliament, the House of Commons was elected. So people could vote, but you had to have a certain income and you had to be a white man. So, like, not shocking. In her reign, Elizabeth only called together Parliament 13 times.
Is that a lot? Is that a little?
Well, think about how long she reigned.
Wait, 13 times
13, 1-3,
in lifetime.
in her entire reign.
I thought it was gonna be like per year or something
No,
like
no,
that.
no. Total.
Jesus.
Yeah. So Parliament was not not really necessary.
Cocky Elizabeth.
They're so,
I know.
Oh, Parliament, they're so cute.
Oh, look how cute they are. So
Fix my potholes.
because I think it was because Elizabeth and Henry, I don't know how many times Henry called Parliament, but he tried to avoid it. They figured out
That
how to
sounds like
get shit
nerd
done.
stuff.
Parliament. I don't wanna.
No, don't make me. So I think they figured out ways to circumvent Parliament but still get shit done. They always found loopholes. Now, if we go down the road of history a little bit, Charles I tried to do that and it didn't work out too well. And then I think Charles II tried to do it as well. There were a lot of civil wars in England for a little while.
All
And
just
they
because I just didn't want to
strictly-
go to Parliament.
Well, it was really because it was Parliament versus King, essentially. And then the King ended up with his head cut off. And Anne Boleyn was like, now you know what it's like.
Ha!
Son of a bitch.
Shit.
You motherfucker. Okay, so after Parliament, there came the local governments. So every county appointed justices of the peace, sheriffs, and lord lieutenants.
Yeah. Justice of the Peace.
You gonna look this up?
No.
Okay.
I was expecting you to tell me.
No.
If I tell you, you won't learn.
Garrett.
That's the whole premise of this fucking podcast.
Well,
Well,
okay,
Yeah.
so I think a justice of the peace was the one who made sure that the law was carried out. They superseded the local power of sheriffs. They were the chief local government officers. They were responsible for maintenance of public order in their areas of jurisdiction. And then there was the sheriff during Tudor times. And what they would do is sheriff and rob from the poor and give to the rich and keep it and then try and steal Maid Marian.
when was Robin Hood based?
TBD. Nobody really knows. But I think
Okay.
it's supposed to be like during King John's reign. So that would have been like the 1300s. And
I
then
want to say that, yeah, because I know it's supposed to be all fictional, but I'm pretty sure it is like 1300s. I was thinking about this the other day.
13th to 14th century is when he first appeared.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking about that. Like, when did like the whole like idea of like the knights and the king kind of like classic style really start in England? It's like one of the things I started thinking about the other day. I'm sure I don't know if
you know
do.
what I think? I think that should be a Patreon episode, and I think you should research it.
Because I was thinking about the other day. I'm like, because it's weird thinking about like they existed during Henry VIII's time, and that's 1500s. But things like Legends of King Arthur and everything, and like Robin Hood, those are like hundreds of years before those. It's weird.
Knights were around at least since the
It's weird to think.
1000s.
To me, it's weird to think how long periods like that lasted. How that's not far. Like the idea of Robin Hood, you would think could have easily have existed in King Henry's time.
Mm-hmm.
Or us, you think about in less than 100 years' time, we went from like Depression era 100 years ago to now today with like.
Well, think about technology too.
Yeah, how much technology has just exponentially like
Compressed.
pushed us forward.
Yeah,
Like it's weird
yeah.
thinking how within 10 years so much changes.
Yep.
How much what life was for us in the 80s to what it is now is just
Yep.
crazy. Whereas them 200 years, that's all it all looks very similar.
Yeah, pretty much. So,
Well, the Renaissance kind of helped,
the
pushed it
Renaissance
further.
was a big change.
and that'll
Like,
happen
the difference
with Henry
between the
VIII's
1300s
time.
and the 1400s were probably not massive, but the 1500s and the 1600s with that Renaissance,
Mhm.
that was big because people were able to learn more. They were encouraged to learn more. The written word became more accessible because of the printing press. It really did change everything. But you're right, because really, as far as I know, and I'm gonna make sure I add that because I'm not a fucking historian and I can't confirm this, but from everything I read, there's really not much of a difference between like 1150 and 1350. Like, if I feel like the only thing you'd be able to really tell a difference in is clothes.
Yeah, fashion.
I mean, wouldn't that also be relatively speaking? Because, I mean, you think about it, like, the leaps from, like, 1900 to 2000 may not seem a lot to us within, like, 50 years, but they absolutely are. Or, like, whatever, like,
But
1950
I disagree
to, like,
with that because I
what
think
we are now.
objectively, if we look at things objectively,
even like socially too, the way the
yeah,
culture too
there
is
is a
how drastic
huge-
changes in the last 100 years between, like, for
Like-
us in America, a lot of voting rights.
think about it. The scale of change that we see. So if you look at compare 100 years ago to today, 1919 to today, right? Think about how people were able to communicate back then. They could use telegrams, they could have a phone call, and they could write letters. Now, I could get on my phone right now and reach somebody in 6 different ways
Across the world.
across the world. Like, people back then had to know where each other were in order to contact them. I could find somebody in a day.
Was it John Mulaney's joke about, like, man, murder must have been so easy back in the day? Because there was, like, no such thing as forensics back in the day. Like, oh,
There's a trail of blood leading to a guy
Well,
covered in blood. Well,
I-
this one's got us
I
stumped.
guess the best we can do is just draw a line around the body so we know where it was.
But not just communication, but like Jeff said, voting rights,
I was thinking more of
laws.
technology anyway, as opposed to
Technology is
Yeah,
probably the
but I
biggest
think-
factor
I-
into a lot of this.
I think even if you look
changes.
at the non-technological differences between like 1150 and maybe 1350, it's still not that different. Like, the Magna Carta maybe made a difference in the way things were run politically, but the average person, the workers, they probably didn't see a difference. Like, I don't think there was much advancement at all in anything, communication, rights, laws, anything like
Okay.
that would have made their lives drastically different in
Well,
200
especially
years.
when during those times, life was so heavily influenced by your class
Yes.
and your birthright.
Yep.
Essentially,
Absolutely.
nothing was very rarely do you have people who felt like they actually earned what they
Totally.
were. A lot of it was just told, oh, you were born in this family? Well, you're going to do this.
Yeah, there's none of this. And I think that as Americans, we tend to forget that that's still kind of the way things are in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
We do have more opportunities to work our way to something better. And I know it's easy for me to forget that even nowadays there are people who are still in that place where they're like, well, you're born in this spot in life, so this is probably where you're going to stay. Whereas, barring somebody who lives in complete isolation, anybody in America kind of has the opportunity to work their way up somewhat.
It's a lot easier.
It is. It's not easy, but there are more opportunities here, I'd say, than a lot of other countries.
Oh, absolutely.
So, good conversation, guys. Yeah. Sometimes we get deep.
It sounds like we know what we're talking about sometimes.
This is what happens when
Full of shit.
This is what happens when Jeff gets tired. He gets
philosophical.
Yep. What did I just talk about for the last half hour?
Shit if I know.
Where are we?
All right, so we're going to go back to the appointees of the counties. So we already talked about the justices of the peace, and there's the sheriffs, and we already talked a little bit about that. But then there's the Lord's Lieutenant, and they were in charge of keeping the defense powered up in each county. So just a final little run through of some of the other elements of government. So the Council of the North oversaw Northern England. The Council of Marches oversaw Wales and the border countries. Oh, we should do a whole episode on Wales. Not that whale. So then there was the nobility and the gentry, and they had manors, and they oversaw their tenants. So the tenants were then... So the gentry and the nobility of these manors, they would resolve conflicts between tenants. They would obviously collect dues from them, and that's how they ended up being so rich. Land was power, yada yada yada. And then there were courts. Oh, I'm such an ass. I told you guys I'd talk about it all in terms of what we know, and I haven't mentioned any of it. The courts were the judicial system.
Whoa, what? No.
So there were there were a fucking lot of courts. So there was the Great Sessions Courts. They were also called the Assizes. And they met...
Okay, but the way that you have it written here, it says Asses.
Assizes.
Yeah, in my brain this is Asses.
Okay, well then let's call it the Asses.
Thank you.
No.
That's probably not it. Don't get mad at us. Or do. Whatever.
So they met 2 times a year in each county, and then there was the Quarter Sessions Courts, and surprisingly they met 4 times a year. Can you believe the Quarter Sessions met 4 times a year?
No.
And they dealt with most crimes. They, the Asses, they dealt the most harsh punishments. So
the Asses had the worst punishments.
The Asses were the worst. There's that deep conversation we were just talking about.
And we're bringing it right back.
Some of the other courts
The Asses are getting deep.
Some of the other courts were the petty sessions courts, the manor courts, the town courts, and those handled unimportant crimes. There was also the Star Court, and of course that was for the wealthy, and they were tried by their privy counselors who were also wealthy. So I'm just going to take a stab in the dark and assume that wasn't a very fair...
They had a red carpet thing. They were asking, who are you wearing? Who are you wearing? And just the stars are out at court today.
Perfect. And then there was the Court of Requests for the poor, and then also the church courts. So that kind of covers the government.
Church court sounds like it needs to be a fucking USA Network TV show.
It really like it could be like Judge Judy, except it's like an archbishop or something.
Church court.
Oh, you're going like the Judge Judy route. I'm going like an SVU, like court procedural. And come on, if it's church court, it's gonna be SVU.
We're bung.
Iced tea.
Iced tea presiding. Bung. All right, so...
Wait, you mean to tell me that this guy took his communion wafer, spit it out on the ground?
Yes, IT. You're in the SBU unit.
This happens all the time.
I like to go one episode without John Mulaney references.
Sorry.
It'll never happen.
We just watched like all of the John Mulaney stuff, and we can't stop laughing about it. Sorry, we'll go old school and start doing some Dane Cook references.
Thanks, Grandma.
God, I just kind of shiver at that thought.
And somewhere out there, Dane Cook just got a little chub. Because somebody's talking about him.
This is an 81 Honda. How dare you? When I hear Dane Cook, I always think of that shitty ass movie with the one great line.
That line's excellent.
It really is. Okay,
And it's
so
not even his line, it's Dak Shepard's line.
I
Man,
know.
this is the most, like, rabbit hole, like, just going off of nowhere.
Oh, I thought you were going to say this is the most anybody's talked about Dane Cook in the past 5 years.
Also,
Which is
yes.
also true.
Oh, poor Dane Cook.
You think he's listening?
Poor Dane Cook.
Yeah, poor Dane Cook, who's got more money than I'll ever look at in my life. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, but Garrett, at least you have friends and the respect of your friends.
Dane, if you're listening, hit me up. Let's hash this out, like you did on that Louis show. Anyway.
All right, so I wanted to wrap up this episode. I wanted to get a little bit of information about what Henry VIII's Privy Council was like, but all I really found was a list.
AKA the Dream Team.
The dream team of Henry VIII. So I found a couple of interesting names.
They came in and they played the Chicago Bulls theme song as they're all being
Jeff,
introduced.
find that and play it.
Are you ready, Rumble?
There we
Problem is,
go.
I would probably have to pay someone for that one.
Just play like 7 seconds of it and
yeah,
then stop it
7
and then play 7
seconds.
seconds of another one.
Artistic license? Fucked if I
Play that John Tesh basketball song. I fucking love that song.
I don't know what that song is.
NBA on NBC.
Well, I don't need to
Oh,
now.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Henry VIII's dream team. So some of the people on it were Thomas Audley. Then there was a guy. So I was like, well, I'll just add their names because they're people I've never heard of, and it really sucks for some of them because they're like, oh, I'm on the King's Privy Council. I'll be remembered forever. And then I'm like, who the fuck is Thomas Audley? But he was one of them. Then there was a guy named Sir John Baker, and he was called Bloody Baker because he was very
Clumsy in the kitchen.
overzealous in his hunt of Protestants.
Jesus.
So Bloody Baker. Then there was a guy
He and
named.
Bloody Mary got together quite often.
Then there was actually. He was writing to like a Protestant burning or something when he found out Mary died. I'm not kidding. Then there was Anthony Brown. So he was important because he had a sister. I can't remember her name. I'm sorry, but
She also wanted to be remembered, and this is how you pay her back.
actually, I do think she just did it to be remembered. So this sister told her brother before she died on her deathbed. She told her brother that Anne Boleyn had an affair with Mark Smeaton, and that
Well, I mean, it's true, right?
was used. Fuck you. That was used as evidence against Anne. Like this dead woman. It was a big thing back then. So
She slept with him. Last words, weird.
so this man, Anthony Brown, she told him, and he was involved in all that. So then there was William Fitzwilliam.
Hey, his name's a palindrome.
These people have the weirdest names.
Do you know Fitz means son? So when they say William Fitzwilliam, it's William, son of William.
Ah, so son of the tantrums.
Then there was John Gage, and interestingly, he served both Henry VII and Henry VIII, and he died in 1556.
These all guys sound like guys from like an old like rock band.
Well,
group.
William Peter, Petre, definitely.
Anthony
sounds-
Brown sounds like a...
That sounds like a dirty sex thing. Could you do the
You're-
Anthony Brown to me, baby?
I want a
Oh,
Tony
if you give me
Brown.
the Bloody Baker. And a dirty Smeaton to top it all off.
Man, this is getting weird. This is kind of getting with Thomas Audley.
Shut the fuck up. So then there was Richard Rich, and we've talked about him before. He was
Yeah,
Every
he was
time.
that cartoon character.
Macaulay Culkin.
yes,
He had a Burger
Macaulay
King in his
Culkin.
house.
Macaulay
McDonald's.
That's the height of luxury.
It was McDonald's,
Let's
sir.
get it right.
He had a Burger King in his house. I swear to God.
It was
Nope,
McDonald's.
I will fight you on this.
I will fight you on this.
pretty-
We will gang up on you
Maybe
and beat
he had a
the
McDonald's, and I was just wishing that it was a Burger King.
Probably because you're South Bend trash.
There was at least one other person out there from South Bend that listens.
Was.
Sorry, South Bend person, for calling you trash.
I didn't know you knew how to work the internet.
Dolores we had a died.
Mayor,
Fuck you
it's
too.
Mayor
Goodbye.
Pete listening to our podcast, and he's like, they think I'm trash.
I imagine him listening and just like giggling, like hee.
And then he talks about us on his campaign trail, and we become huge. And then Donald Trump hears about us, and he starts listening, and he gets upset because we start insulting him. Oh, and then he tweets to us in angry ways, and he's like, sad.
Yeah, that's what I want. This podcast to become more political than it already is.
Anyway, so Richard Rich was a dick. He was instrumental in Moore's conviction, but then also I found this out when Catherine of
He named
Aragon
his
died.
dog Dollar.
When Catherine of Aragon died, he went to inventory all of her stuff. So he sent Henry the inventory of her shit, and he goes, by the way, can I have some of this?
That sounds like something I would do.
Are you doing anything with this?
It's like you need it.
It's a really nice bench you have. Like, I could use a kitchen table, man.
You can keep the monogram towels. Like, I just want this.
So then there was John Russell, and he actually survived Henry's entire reign. The entire reign.
One of the few.
As a
He got a trophy.
right? Ralph Sadler, and interestingly, he was imprisoned in January 1541, but then 6 days later he was attending a Privy Council session. So, like, I guess whatever the charges were just like one of Henry's weird moods where he's like, you looked at me funny, to the Tower.
Politics and prisoners, am I right? Har, 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 har.
Then there was Anthony Wingfield, and then a man named Thomas Wriothesley. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, Wriothesley. And I think I've mentioned him before, but the quote about him from a source at the time called him unscrupulous and devious. And I'm like...
Which means he's just kind of an asshole.
Yeah, but of all of the shitty people in the Tudor times that we've read about, like Richard Rich, what did Thomas Wriothesley do to be called unscrupulous and devious?
We got to learn about him.
Yeah, we do. Let's do a Wriothesley episode.
It's a Roth episode. Y'all already know. Y'all were asking for it.
Oh, that sounds fun. So that's it. That's the court, or that's the government of, we'll say Elizabethan England, but Tudor-ish England. So I hope you don't have any questions, because I have literally no answers.
Where was the Court of Miracles?
Maybe you've heard of the Court of Miracles.
I'm lost.
Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's a John Mulaney joke. Jesus. No, it's Hunchback of Notre Dame.
I don't remember a lot about that movie.
Maybe you've heard of it.
Except that the guy was ugly, the bad guy was real bad, and the lady awakened some things in me.
She awakened things in everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Who was
you've
that,
heard of the Court of Miracles.
was that Demi Moore?
Demi Moore. Kevin Kline was the
Phoebus.
knight. Phoebus the knight. The guy who played Quasimodo was Mozart Amadeus.
Amadeus.
Yeah, the movie Amadeus.
Falco?
He
No,
was
Falco
he was
the-
in Animal House too,
Animal House as well, or Animal House 2?
as well.
Thank you. All right, so that's our podcast. Emily, how can these fine people find us?
Check us out on Twitter at Tudor Know Her, on Facebook at Tudor I Hardly Know Her. Find us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and then search Tudor I Hardly Know Her.
Google.
We're not even sure how to find ourselves either.
The URL. And you can email us at tudorknowher@gmail.com.
Correct.
There we go.
We are slowly working on on kicking ass with this Patreon again. We keep saying it.
I am pumped about the next episode. It's gonna be fun.
Yes, we're recording.
Fun,
We're recording
fun.
the next bonus episode, and it's not just gonna be a commentary episode
No,
or like
it's a
hey,
good one.
let's talk about this TV show. No, we're talking about something real. What are we talking about, Emily?
We are talking about Juana la Loca.
What?
Juana la Loca.
The crazy?
Juana the Mad.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds great.
Heads up, guys.
She's a little crazy.
She's a little. I mean, there's debate about the whether she's actually crazy, but I don't think you can debate the carrying her husband's corpse.
Well, if you donate to our Patreon, you could find out.
Yeah, was Juana.
Just $1. Just $1.
Juana dollars loca.
Oh, God.
Okay. On that note, divorce beheaded died.
Divorce beheaded survived. Goodbye.
Goodbye.